every single hero in every single movie goes through adversity. There's never been a hero movie where all he does is win. No, to be a hero, you have to suffer. And this can be extrapolated out, not just about my life, but about all men out there. If you're suffering in some degree, even if you're a normal guy with a normal job and you're suffering at your job, or you've had your heart broken because your girl left you or whatever, if you're suffering, that's part of your hero's journey. There is no hero's journey without suffering. If you have an easy life the whole way through, you never get to be a hero. That's the whole point of being a man, is that you're supposed to suffer. You're supposed to eat pain for breakfast. You're supposed to come and grow into a better version of yourself. That's exactly what life's supposed to be about as a man. And another thing I want to say, when you mentioned that movie that popped to my head, I find it amazing that men will sit and watch movies about prisoners of war in Japan, or watch movies about men who go to war and risk their lives, or watch all these hero movies, and they have admiration for the hero, and they believe themselves to be some version of a hero, and then they're too afraid to say no to putting on a mask. If you're not going to say no to putting on a mask, don't watch hero movies anymore, because you're certainly not a hero. You are one of the villains. You're not even one of the important villains. You're not even one of the villains with a name. You're the stupid little henchmen who get beaten up. Those guys who are on screen for a flash of a second and die without consequence. Nobody even cares or mentions them again. Their family don't even get to give them a funeral. They're nobodies. You're a nobody villain. You're not even an important one. The important villains, we know their names. You're a number. You're not a name. If you're going to watch superhero movies, don't put a mask on your fucking face. And if you want to be a superhero in life, you need to understand that for 80% of the movie, you're going to suffer. For 80% of the movie, you're going to lose. Watch any superhero movie. For 80% of the movie, it is nothing but pain and frustration and difficulty. And when your life is that way, you have a chance to grow into something fantastic, and you should thank God for every difficult thing he puts in your path. Yeah, so I knew the guards were watching me, and I'm stubborn, and I believe that every time I did push-ups and they saw me doing them, I believed in my heart it annoyed them. And I am a very stubborn man, because they wanted me to be sad and broken. But every time they saw me, I was sweating and training. And every single time they'd check, they saw nothing but a lion who refused to stop doing push-ups. And they didn't want to do push-ups. They were too lazy. They're sitting around. They're the guards. They're not doing anything. And every single time they checked me for weeks and weeks and weeks, all I did was train. And I found the motivation to do it by knowing that it bothered them that I refused to quit. I'm stubborn like that. I don't even know if it's true. All I know is that I can adopt a mental model which makes me as competitive as possible, and I decided my push-ups bothered them, and they were the ones who were keeping me locked in a room, so I will do push-ups at them. I didn't do push-ups for me. I did push-ups at them endlessly. If I was awake, I was doing push-ups, or I was resting, preparing for my next set at them. It was my only weapon of defiance. A man is unfairly imprisoned in a Romanian jail cell and trained so hard he emerges stronger than ever before. That is a movie. You get to live a movie as a man if all you had was some balls. Even you, think about your movie. You're literally saving the world, predicting the future. Our movies, I'm the most Googled man alive. We are living movie scripts. Why? Because we have bravery. Most men sit there and wonder why they're depressed, because you don't get to live a movie. You're not the main character of anything. You're not even a secondary character in anyone else's movie. You're an unimportant nobody because you were afraid your entire life. You've lived like a coward your whole life. You were afraid of what might happen if you have some balls. And then you wonder why you're depressed. I'd be depressed if I was you. Of course, your life sucks. I'd rather go to jail as me than live free as you. Because when you're free, you can't even do anything. You can't go where you want. You're broke. You can't have sex. Girls don't want you. You can't speak because no one listens. So what are you free to do? You're more in jail than I ever was. When I was in jail, I was getting thousands of love letters from beautiful women around the world. Every single tweet I put out was watched by millions of people. I wasn't in jail. Dude, you're more in jail than I ever was. When I was in jail, I was getting thousands of love letters from beautiful women around the world. Every single tweet I put out was watched by millions of people. I wasn't in jail. 50 to 100 million people. Exactly. Most of these people who have lived with cowardice in an attempt to preserve their freedom aren't even free. And that's what they don't understand. They're enslaved worse than I ever have been or ever will be. My mind is free. I'm allowed to think what I want to think and say what I want to say. They have thoughts and they go, don't know if I should say that. They second guess themselves. They're their own worst enemy. Every single part of me is on my team. I have enemies who want me dead. Fine. But every single part of me, my mind, my hands, my legs, every single part of me is on my team. My body doesn't second guess itself. My mind doesn't turn on itself. We don't break and self-sabotage. There's no civil wars inside of Andrew Tate. All of us against you. All of us. Well, absolutely it's backfiring, because that's the worst thing you do to a teenage boy, say, don't watch this man. And the thing that they don't understand, because these people are so disconnected from reality. All of these people are genuinely disconnected. They don't understand that my message makes people feel better. I teach men to be strong. I teach men how to make money. I teach men how to be confident, how to be motivated, how to be disciplined, how to be diligent, how to be hardworking. If a man adopts these qualities and applies them to his life will get better. This isn't a matter of just consuming content on the internet. This is a matter of people's lives genuinely changing their day-to-day reality. If that happens, if somebody's day-to-day reality changes because they're a fan of me and they listen to my content, who do you think you are to come along and tell them to stop and go back to misery? It's never going to work. It's never going to work. And the reason I'm so heavily demonized is not because the things I say, it's because I am so massively influential. And when I'm teaching these young men, these young boys to have any degree of standard for themselves, any degree of parameter for what they will accept inside of their minds, they see that as a threat to the slave programming. If a man stands up for himself and has self-respect, he doesn't want to wear a mask because he respects himself. He doesn't want to take antidepressants. He respects himself. He doesn't want to eat the bugs. He respects himself. They don't want men to have self-respect. We're not allowed to have self-respect. We have to sit there and be completely empty vessels waiting for the slave programming to be plugged in, so we'll comply. That's all they want is compliance. And that's why me, as a man who stands up and says, listen, you should become as strong as possible. You should believe in yourself. You should be motivated. And you should also try to make as much money as possible, because money is a very important weapon in the fight against slavery. I am seen as public enemy number one for genuinely improving people's lives. That's how evil these people are. Absolutely. Strong men make women happy. I get called a misogynist all the time for telling men to have standards. Men with standards and principle and capability and competence make women happy. The number one way to improve female mental health is to make men better men. And the reason they don't want men to be strong and have any kind of control over their relationships or their households is very simple. Females are easier to sway with an emotional argument. If you have a bunch of households which are run by women and the woman is in charge, and then the woman is going to sit and watch an emotional argument, propaganda, which is all that the MSM use, they can't use logical arguments, so they use emotional ones. Put the mask on for grandma. Well, grandma's 98, and 98-year-olds unfortunately die of diseases. And telling a 6-year-old kid to put a mask on, or a 21-year-old strong man to put a mask on because 98-year-old grandma might get sick, doesn't even make any logical sense. But it's an emotional argument, and women fall for emotional arguments easier than men. So how do you control a populace? It's very simple. You subdue the men, you make the women in charge, you make a matriarchy, and then you use emotional arguments via the propaganda mechanisms, because women are more likely to agree with them, and then you have the entire population under control. That's why it's done on purpose. They don't want a man to have any degree of control over anything in his life. Even his own house. You can't be the king of your own household anymore. And it's making women miserable. It's making men miserable. It makes the entire populace miserable. And there's another thing I want people to understand. Misery is also a very key component to their slave agenda. Because when you're truly miserable, you are selfish. You don't care about anything that happens outside of yourself. People say that you and I perhaps were angry people, but I'll tell you something. We're positive people because we care. We care about what happens to our country. We care about what happens to our cities. We care about what happens to the future for our children. When you're truly miserable and truly sad, you're self-obsessed. You don't care about anything but yourself. They want us all miserable on antidepressants, eating the bugs, watching the TV shows. Because then when something happens down the street that's not supposed to happen, we don't care. Oh, yeah, well, the store down the street got robbed and my town's on fire, but I'm sad anyway. They want us all selfish, because when we're selfish, you can't band together to resist anything. It's a good question. And they are the end result of a very sophisticated propaganda machine, which has been built with the sole intention of creating miserable drones, which will believe anything they are told. These people can be told the sky is green, and they'll believe it. And all of the propaganda which is being pumped their way is negative. The world is going to end because the sun is hot. Don't have kids. That's bad for some reason. Don't eat meat. Only eat the bugs. Sit at home. You should have a therapist. You should be on antidepressants. Like, they're just trying to pump nothing but negativity of these people, and they absorb it. And this is what I said to one of my friends. My friend said, Andrew, you've been through so much for telling the truth. Why do you do it? And I say, well, you either fight against the injustice and tell the truth and you suffer the consequences of that, or you believe the bullshit and suffer the consequences of being at war with your own mind and your own biology and end up miserable anyway. There is a war that cannot be escaped, and I would rather live true to God and tell the truth and fight the war this way. But it's truly incredible that these leftists do what they do. And I also think there's something that global about the world that most people don't understand. The people who are in charge of the planet, who are in charge of global finance and make all the important decisions and who are in charge of money, they are called globalists for a reason. They have no particular interest in any one country. All they care about is control and maximizing profits. And I don't think many people understand that. For a long time, we've been exploiting the second and third worlds because someone has to lose for another person to win. There's no light without dark. We've been exploiting the second and third worlds for a long time to be prosperous in the West, and that's now changing for a variety of reasons, which will be a very long conversation. But the globalists have no problem exploiting the first world and simply turning it on its head, destroying the societies of America, destroying the societies of Europe, doing whatever they need to do to make endless and forever profit, and they'll simply move to a penthouse in another part of the world. They have no problem to move to Africa, or they have no problem moving to the Middle East. They have no problem to live in Asia. As long as they get forever profits and billions of dollars, they'll let Europe burn. And all of these leftist policies are designed to create a slave class of people which have no interest in trying to preserve the sanctity of the nations they live within. Oh, absolutely, pod people. And pod people can't have any remnants of warrior spirit inside of them because they're not going to be able to live in their pod. So this is the point. The world's over in 2030. Why go to the gym? Why get strong? Why work hard? Why get rich? Why be funny? Why be charismatic? Why do anything? It doesn't matter. The world's going to end. Sit in your pod. Wait for the food delivery. That's what they want from all of us. They want all of us to have absolutely no ambition and to sit there and be slave-minded. And it's very difficult to resist enslavement if you need the government to eat. I think all governments on the planet are constantly trying to encroach on the freedom of their populace, trying to get closer and closer to some version of communism where you have to absolutely and utterly comply or you literally do not have food to eat. And that's what they want. And it's an obvious agenda. It's a very obvious agenda, and it plays into the worst characteristics of the human psyche. Because there are a lot of people out there who, when given the excuse to be lazy, will be lazy. When given the excuse for why they're not successful, will take that excuse and use it as a shield for their own glaring, obvious failings. And we're now building two camps. We have the camps of losers and winners, and the winners are telling the truth, and the losers are just adopting all of the slave mind programming. And unfortunately, it's becoming more and more dangerous now to even say the truth because these losers band together like hyenas and attack anybody who stands up and tells the truth, like they've attacked you and like they've attacked me. The people who are trying to put me in jail are not good people. They're not good people. They're not honest, hardworking, God-fearing people. They're evil people, and they know exactly what they're trying to do. It's scary. Absolutely, they don't have God on their side. The moral arc of the universe bends towards truth. It takes unlimited energy to continue to propagate a lie. It's very difficult to do. It goes against the law of physics. If you put a lie into the universe, you need to continually push that lie to keep it afloat. It's like a hot air balloon. You need to keep that engine running. You need to keep the flame going permanently to keep it floating. Because as long as people use their own eyes and their own senses and eventually begin to think, the lie is going to sink and it's going to disappear. And there's certainly been a shift in consciousness in the last 3 to 4 years. 3 to 4 years ago, it was much worse than it is today. And I feel like I said this when I was canceled in August of last year. I was doing Patrick Bet-David's podcast, and I said, they are making a mistake. When you have power, the only guarantee to power is that one day you will lose it. And the quickest way to lose power is to overuse it, to overreach, to overstretch. When you do that, everyone loses faith in you. For you to have power, you must have the faith of the populace. Once people understand that you're abusing your power and it's no longer a fair system, they're no longer interested in what you have to say or your power mechanisms. And then you can only resort to complete brutality. And I think it's going to be quite difficult for them to do now that the consciousness of people are waking up. But certainly, yeah, I feel like we are winning now. I feel like you and I have been through the trenches and suffered the absolute worst of it 5 to 6 years ago. And now most people understand. They overstepped with the COVID lies. They overstepped with the censorship. They overstepped with the election lies. They overstepped trying to say anybody who tells the truth is a sexual predator. They overstepped by protecting all the people who we know do genuinely bad things they refuse to talk about. They overstepped so many times now that people have a thirst in their hearts to know what's really going on. And that's our chance to finally make it clear to people. And I pray we can finally get through to people to a level where next time they try the next big psyop, which we can talk about, which might be coming up soon, everybody rejects it. Because there's something really important, Alex. We talk always about who controls the world. But ultimately, without our compliance, they can't control anything. We control the world. A mask mandate is a piece of paper. It's a piece of fucking paper. That's it. It's cowardice that makes that have power. If everyone wasn't a coward and stood up and said, no, I'm sorry, I respectfully decline, then it's over. We still control the world, but that's why they're trying their absolute best to make sissies of all of us. And you know, it's very interesting we say this because I don't want anyone to think we're inciting violence because that's not what we're doing. Even during the last COVID lockdown, you can resist so easily in a non-violent way. If I went into a store and they said, you have a mask, put a mask on. Don't have one, sorry. Okay, I'll give you one. Okay, give me one. And then I wouldn't walk over to take it. No, I stand there and make them walk across the store to give it to me. Then I take it and I half hang it on my ear and I don't wear it properly. Then they come up to me and say, oh, you need to wear it properly. I say, oh, okay. Then I don't wear it properly. Then I take it off completely. Then they come up to me and go, oh, where's your mask? I say, sorry, I dropped it on the floor and it's dirty. I need another one. Then they have to go back behind the counter, get another mask, walk back to the other side of the store, give it to you. Make them work. Make them work. If they want you to wear a mask so fucking bad, make them walk a marathon. Make them work. Don't make it easy for them. If they want to stand there and try and make a slave of you, at least make them do something for it. You know, I had people walking back and forth around stores getting me 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 different masks. I never even put it on because I dropped it on the floor, right? We're all scared of germs now. I can't wear a mask from the floor. It might have COVID on it. Don't come too close. Social distancing. Just put the mask there. I'll collect it in a second. Make them work for it. That's civil disobedience. If everyone did that, imagine you worked in a store and every person who came in did what I just described. Are you going to really run around for 12 hours a day? You'll give up after 2 hours. But the reason it doesn't happen, the reason they get away with this is because everybody just complies. Mask on. Okay. Like, I'm not describing anything violent. I'm not describing anything that will get you arrested. I'm not describing anything that will even cause an argument. I'm just talking about using your fucking brain and having some balls. And it's very important if they try and bring this back. I really pray that this will be a breaking point for their entire apparatus, because I think enough people are awake now to absolutely and utterly resist. That was a huge psyop. And I love to think, and I hope I'm right, I love to think that anybody who lived through that has learned their lesson. And like I said, the number one guarantee of power is that you'll lose it, because eventually with power, you will overstep and you will overreach. And if they try another lockdown, another pandemic, I think it's the biggest overreach they could possibly try. So I hope they do it. And I hope that people do what they're supposed to do, which is say no.
Like, there's no way that I should have won that fight. There's no way I should have won. They're the BBC. They had prepared. They'd set it up. She had rehearsed. They lied, saying it was going to be completely different questions. I just got out of jail. I had mental health problems. I couldn't sleep. I had bad nightmares. I've been in solitary confinement. All this. And I come out, I win. Of course they hate me. I'd hate me. Of course all they're going to do is print garbage about me forever. So why did I even do it? I guess the reason I did it is because I always have a parachute. I always have a bungee cord of brutal competence. And that competence has come from conflict, and I'm very well versed. I can argue any point. I can argue when I know I'm wrong. I can argue the sky is green. I can argue anything. There's no point I can't argue. And I have that backup.
I think the world has always only ever been a battle for influence. Even if you look at the current battlefield, Ukraine is next door, it's 5 hours drive away. The battle in Ukraine is not just about tanks and trenches and grenades. It's a battle for influence. Who influences the people within this territory? Who is in charge of the thinking, the language, the mindset of people within this geographical area? Every single battle, every single pitched battle, every single argument, every single debate has always been a battle for influence. If you have influence, you're an extremely powerful person. All of us here are some of the most powerful people in the world. How many millions of people listen to us? We have massive influence. And I think you can have influence at the ground level. You don't have to be a famous podcaster or famously well-known to have influence. I would argue that those Romanian grandmas who gave me my food will remember me for the rest of their lives. I would like to believe I gave a positive influence and a positive impact on their lives for the rest of their life. I believe if you go through life and you're genuinely a good person, you try your best to be good to people, and you're honest and you shake hands and you don't lie and you're on time and you work hard and you're good to everyone who's good to you, I think you'll have a massive influence. And I also believe, I truly believe that God is extremely giving. There's the saying, goes around, comes around. Completely true. But I would say it comes from God. God is keeping an eye on you, and he's paying attention to you, and he knows the kind of person you are and the kind of things you do. And I don't believe if you're actually genuinely a good person all of the time, that you're not going to get some goodwill back to you. Look at my scenario. If I was being a piece of shit for years with all these chicks, I'd be in jail. I'd be in jail. I could have never seen this coming. But the fact that I was nice, the paid their taxi home, bought them food, looked after them. Are you okay? I know we broke up. I'm sorry. I know it hurts. I just did it. I was nice about all of it. Here I am. I'm fine. And so I could have never seen this matrix attack coming. It's amazing how what goes around comes around. It's truly amazing. If you're good to people, if you're generous to people, if you're helpful to people, you'd be amazed how much influence you can build up. I say this to people all the time. I don't think if you're a hardworking person who is honest, who shakes hands, who tries to learn, who does what they're supposed to do, who has a good heart, that you're truly, really not going to be able to get what you want. I think the universe is absolutely inartly giving. When I see somebody who says they want something and they don't have it, I don't even think they truly even want it. You can have anything you want in the world. When a guy goes, I want a six-pack, then why ain't you got one? If you wanted it, you'd have it. You'd like it. There's a bunch of things I'd like that I don't have, but I don't want them. Everything I've ever wanted, I've got. I've never wanted something and not had it. We all know what we're talking about here. There's things we'd like. I'd like to be able to figure skate. Not enough to go learn to figure skate. I was also extremely self-critical. I think that's where a lot of it comes from. I'll watch this podcast back 15 times. I will notice every single time I made a mistake. Just then I said I'll watch twice. That was a mistake. I will watch this back 15 times and I'll identify every single error. I have an email list and I sign up and I get words of the day. I get 5 or 6 new words a day, which I try my very best to memorize. It's harder than you think to memorize 5 words a day, but I always try to make sure I have the most interesting vernacular I can possibly have, a wide vocabulary, so I can be very specific with my points. The reason I actually did that, I keep talking about my dad, but I'm his son. I have the same name, Emory Andrew Tate III. He was Emory Andrew Tate II. My father was a linguist for the CIA. He spoke Russian and German and Spanish and English. And I think I've told this before. Back then, when they needed someone who spoke Russian, they would take a Native American and teach them Russian. Nowadays, we have a bunch of Russian-speaking allies. You can go to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. They're all NATO and just get a Russian speaker. Back then, they taught my dad Russian, and he held the Air Force record for the fastest assimilation of a foreign language. When he died, a guy sent me an email, sent me a message saying, you don't know who I am, but I worked with your father in the Air Force, and he had the fastest assimilation. He learned Russian in 2 weeks. Crazy. And I remember saying to my dad, will you teach me Russian? He said, boy, you don't even know English. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you don't even know English. And once he sat me down with a dictionary, I was like, you're right. I don't even know English. That's why I've lived in Romania 7 years. People say, why don't you speak Romanian? Because I don't know English yet. I need to finish the first job before I learn the second. I don't know English. There's a bunch of words I don't know. I can't speak how he spoke. So I don't have time for a second language. Yeah. Also, another thing I found really interesting, Putin speaks English. Have you ever heard him speak English? No. Because if you want to speak to Putin, you speak to him in his language. You speak to me in Russian, and I reply to you in Russian, so I cannot be misunderstood or misconstrued. I don't make a fool of myself. You can't get me on some vernacular trick. I speak my language, and I also prefer that also. I speak English, that's what I speak. If you want to speak to me, you speak to me in my language, so I will win the debate always. So first things first, you need to be worthy of respect, and you're going to be worthy of respect through having things which are difficult to acquire. So first things first, the basic things, you need to be very focused on trying to make money, because people listen to you when you have money. They just do. Secondly, you need to be in fantastic physical condition, because when you're in fantastic physical condition, it cannot be bought. It must be earned, and people know that. When you're in, I don't know about you, if someone walked in to sell me something and they were obese, I would not trust them the same as if they were in fantastic physical shape. Because I'd say, I don't think you have dedication and heart. I don't think there's something about you that I just wouldn't trust you the same. So fantastic physical condition and money is the first thing. The second thing, whatever your ideas are, you need to learn how to communicate them. Speaking is a superpower in and of itself. You need to become a fantastic communicator. You need to be comfortable in all realms of communication. You need to be persuasive. You need to be comfortable arguing. You need to be good at debating. There's a lot of people out there in the world who have ideas that they can't even project into somebody else's mind. How are you going to rule the world with that? How are you going to get your ideas out there and make an influence if you can't make other people understand exactly what you think? That's the first thing. Second thing, once they understand exactly what you think, you need to make them agree with what you think. These are two different skills. Must be practiced and must be learned. If you're 20 years old and you want to change the world, you need to be having endless debates. Endless. Without resorting to name calling, not on Twitter like a dummy, in person. And you need to come across in a way that people agree with you. We can go back quickly and talk about the red pill. The difference between me when I talk to girls on these panel shows and every other guy when they talk to girls on these panel shows is, when I'm done, all the girls want me. Watch them. Watch the shows. I say the same thing, and by the end the chicks are in love with me, as opposed to saying the same thing and the chicks thinking I'm a dickhead. That's the difference. I project my ideas and I make them agree with my ideas to a point where they're like, texting me afterwards. I'm not saying anything different, it's how I'm communicating it. You can catch more flies with honey than hurting people sometimes. So you need to be good at everything. You need to have a Swiss Army knife of tools. I know when to be intimidating or aggressive. I know when to come across as obtuse. I know when to come across as exceptionally open-minded and easy to understand. I know when to come across as understanding. I know all these things. This all has to be practiced. And a lot of it is, communication. I would say, if you're going to say to a 20-year-old who's truly exceptional and driven, I'd say you need to become a master communicator. Because once you can do that, you can do anything. And that fixes all the other problems, right? We talk about making money. If you're a master communicator, you do fantastic in sales, you'll kill sales. You'll absolutely destroy sales if you're a master communicator. Not many people know this, but I used to sell windows. You know the old school knock on the door? Window sales. I did window sales for 2 or 3 years, and I'd say this is one of the hardest jobs you could possibly do. And I would always recommend a young man, if he has some time to waste, to go sell windows. And the reason, it's fantastic, because I'll tell you why. It's the hardest one to sell because, 1, nobody wants them. 2, they don't know who you are. And 3, even if you convince them that they need windows, after them not knowing who you are, then they go to all your competitors and then it becomes a price war. It's a nightmare. It's the hardest sales job. If you're selling a Lambo, at least they want the Lambo, right? Nobody wants glass and plastic. They already have windows. So you gotta find a way to sell them these windows. How do you do that? And that's where all this master communication comes in. And it's so many subtle little things. Being a good salesman is not necessarily being a liar. It's not being a trickster. It's just understanding what's going to make the person believe and understand what you say. If I walked in and said, would you like new windows? And they essentially said, no, we don't need new windows. Our windows look fine. I would say, but what about the security aspect? While looking at their 3-year-old child. And they'd sit there and go, what do you mean security aspect? And then I talk about how we had the lock 5000, and their locks are easy to break. As if glass isn't glass, it's all the same anyway. And you'd end up selling the windows. You have to find the triggers in people. There's another thing people don't understand about me and my message. Sometimes I sit here and I say things that piss people off because that's how you trigger people to make action. I have often written emails or done videos, especially to men when I want to help men, to piss them off. You're a loser. You're a dumbass. Andrew, why you mean? Because you're not going to go to the gym unless I tell you you're a fucking loser. And you are a loser, and I'm not lying to you. You are a loser. The emotional trigger you need to get up off that chair is the fact that you're not important, nobody cares who you are, any girl you're ever in love with I could take, and you're insignificant. And when you die, nobody's interested. That's your fault. You could have been something else. You did that. You failed. It has to be done. You have to be a master communicator. And sometimes that involves also insulting people. It's all a massive tapestry, but to answer your question, for the 20-year-old, he needs to become a master at communicating. But also to be a master at communicating, you also need experiences worth talking about. You have to live a life. You need a degree of wisdom, and wisdom doesn't always come with age, it comes with life lived. I had a guy message me, this is a long time ago when I used to reply to my own emails, too big now, but he said, I don't have any stories, my life's boring. I said, bro, where do you live? He said, Madrid. I said, bro, ride the train from Madrid to St. Petersburg. Ride the train from Madrid to Vladivostok. Do the Trans-Siberian Railway. It costs you like $300. He goes, oh, but what if I get robbed? Exactly! That's exactly the point! What if you get robbed? Now you have a story. Maybe you'll die, maybe you won't. But you have a story. Don't bring your watch. If you got a Rolex, no one wants to rob you anyway. Don't worry about it. You're brokey. Get on the train. There has to be that degree of risk to even have a story, because when you have a story, then you can communicate the story. You can't be an empty vessel either. So when you say you're telling me how I build this 20-year-old into a super soldier, yeah, he has to be a master communicator, but he also has to do things which are risky. Risk has value intrinsically linked to it, intrinsically. This is why people, when you do risky things, people want to hear the story. Your coolest stories involve risk. Something went wrong, this could have happened, I almost I made it out. Without these risks, you haven't got it. So I would say to the 20-year-old, do what I did, get in the cage, get in the ring. Knock someone out, get knocked out, train hard. Fighting will teach you everything you need to know about life. You'll learn everything about who you truly are. You'll learn if you're a coward or not. You'll learn everything about perseverance and hard work and dedication, everything about being underappreciated. You learn everything about fear. You learn all of it. You learn everything about people. You win a fight, check your phone. Lose a fight, check your phone. You learn all about people. You learn all about them. You learn all about women. I learned so much about women through fighting. When I had a fight coming up and I was weight drained and I had barely eaten in weeks and I'd lost all this weight and I had a world title fight and I'm fighting a guy who might kill me and she's complaining about the toilet seat. I learned all about women. You learn a lot about life through these difficult processes and paths. And there used to be for men like a rite of passage. In most societies you had to go through something to become a man, from a boy to a man. But that thing was always difficult. It's always been difficult. Now you have to self-induce it, self-inflict it. But if you're going to be a boy and never bring on that self-inflicted rite of passage, how are you going to ever become a man?
That's great feedback.
I think if you're an exceptional person, a truly exceptional person, you don't have to be afraid of nearly anything. But you'll probably agree with this. In my experience, in nearly every business in the world, you have 10% killers, and then you have a bunch who want the paycheck. They do their job, but I wouldn't say they're killers. You understand? Mm-hmm. And we live in a society for a long time where I can even tell you now, sometimes when I hire, I'll say to my cousin or to my COO, I'll say, look, either get 1 killer or 3 normal people. Because that's the reality. That's the basic. You either need 3 people to half do the job, or you need 1 killer to do the job. And I think that those 3 people who half do their jobs, enough to not get fired, they turn up most of it on time, but they're not really that motivated. Those are the ones who have to fear AI. I think businesses in the medium term are going to become killers and AI. I tell them now, I have some guys who work for me on one particular company and their sales staff. I was reading through the sales scripts. The killers doing really well, but the average guys, I said, you're not doing much better than ChatGPT could do right now. I want to warn you that you're not doing much better than I could replace you with a machine today, let alone in 5 years from now, for free. You need to be careful. So I think it's just becoming more and more competitive. The idea that you can just be Joe Schmo, do your job, turn up, I don't try that hard, it's fine. I think that's all going to go out the window, because as the world becomes more competitive, as a company, you have to compete with your competitors, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is just, where do you cut the fat? Where do you cut the slack? When I see AI popping up and getting more and more intelligent in the way it's talking, that doesn't scare me. But I have a way with words. If I was Joe Schmo, I'd be afraid. This chat GPT can probably text your girl better than you can. He'll probably get laid faster than you will.
That's a little advice for the guys out there right now. Just
plug it into your phone. It'll do better than you do. So that's scary, you know?
That's hilarious.
I think that's what the average man really needs to struggle. And I've been saying, this has been my message for a very long time in all realms. I've said for a very long time that life for the average man is going to get harder and harder. It's becoming more and more competitive. You need to find more and more ways to stand out and be unique. And the only way to really do those things, unfortunately, as a man, is to suffer. And that's one of the reasons I'm kind of glad that God put me in jail, because if you look at anything that builds a man into a man, there's a degree of suffering. It's very hard to become a man and have a man who's respected and has stories and is capable when he only had a nice life and nice experiences. It's usually the things that made you the best version of you are usually the worst things that happened to you. So the demons I carry from jail, the fact that I can't sleep. The fact that I can't sleep, I've had girls say to me, you can't sleep, you need to see a psychiatrist. And I said, absolutely not. I would be furious if a psychiatrist walked in here and took my demons from me. I don't care if they could fix me with a click, they're mine. And they were bestowed to me by God. And they are mine to deal with, and they are mine to fix, because that's how I become a better version of me. I would be furious if someone took them away from me. I'm glad I can't sleep. Good, I can train endlessly. That's why I'm bigger than I've ever been. I'll train I'm not going to waste a minute. But all the demons that have been given to me by God and all the problems that have been given to me by God are mine to fix. I would never, ever allow anybody else to take them from me. I'd be furious. Mm-hmm. If a psychologist came in and said I could cure you, I'd say, no, thank you. I will cure myself. I don't care if it takes 10 years. I'll cure myself. That's my job. And I know that when that's done, I will be more mentally resilient than I ever would have been without jail. That's the whole point of it, right? So many men say, I want to be the man, but they don't want to suffer, they don't want to fight, and I don't understand why, because even if you look at a superhero movie, they tell you, even in superhero movies, they make it very clear, Batman's parents died, that's why he's Batman. All the bad things have to happen. There's no way to get there without the bad things. I get so many emails from people complaining about their bad things, and I don't have time to reply to any of them, but if I could, I'd say, good luck, congratulations, off you go. Of course she broke your heart. Of course you're sad. Of course you miss her. She's with me now. That's life. That's part of it. That's the only way you're going to get to that level of resilience. You can't become the man any other way. So yeah, I thank God for everything bad that's ever happened to me and all the demons. And I trust that he's not going to give me anything I cannot, in the end, decipher and deal with. In the end, I think it's a puzzle. And you decipher it, and you work out the best way to deal with it, and you internalize the good parts, and you become a better and stronger and more resilient person for it. Mm-hmm. So I have to thank God for every single one of them.
At all.
It's not acceptable anymore, and it's not acceptable in the sexual marketplace, but it's also just not acceptable, I don't think, even in life anymore.
Period.
You have to diversify now so much to even protect yourself. The idea that you can just be a law-abiding citizen in a country and just work your job and be okay is gone. It's gone. If COVID doesn't prove that, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Look at my situation. You have to diversify diversify. You have to be smart enough that you have assets and friends and capability and lawyers and whatever all over the world now. That's the only way to protect yourself. You can't just sit within one jurisdiction and go, oh, well, but I don't speed, so it's going to be okay. I don't think it is. I think it's coming to a point where it's not going to be okay. And AI is going to make it harder and harder, again, for those average men. It's going to be harder and harder. I don't think the exceptional men are ever going to suffer from AI. I think we're going to use AI. And I'm starting to say that now. I'm glad I'm not young. Because I'm telling you, it's going to be scary, right? Because the world is hyper-competitive. Every single thing in the world is competition. I don't think people realize I'm a hyper-competitive person because I understand that every single thing I want, somebody else wants. The girl I want, other people want. The car I want, other people want. The house I want, other people want. The lifestyle, the jet, every single thing you want, somebody else wants. It's a massive competition. As a man, you have two choices. You either accept that as a massive competition and try and play the game, or you just try and pretend it's not a competition and live in perpetual failure. And it's going to become hyper-competitive, the world already is. You're not going to be able to compete with a person with a computer brain. So you're going to have it, because you can't compete. Then once you have it, then who knows? Can they turn it off? I don't know. Can they turn you off? I don't know. Can they inject the slave mind programming directly through the chip? I don't know. That's scary. I would never want to do that, but it's going to get to a point where you're not even a person without it. You can't function without it. You're a second-class citizen.